to write them. Go.
You explain. I'm dead.
The form will do all the explaining for me. I'll be sharing around. That means that your ultimate fate and destiny rests in my whimsy. And hers, to a lesser extent. You are? Allison. And you're your judge? Abby? Okay. Allison and Abby are my arbiters of power and my agents of execution. So essentially, we're going to go, we're going to debate, we're going to judge you, and we're going to explain why. Hopefully you'll be satisfied with that.
Sure.
That's going to break down that way, okay? We all good with that? All right, gravy. Anyway, once this is all filled out, we'll get this show on the road. What do you guys want to time this? Bad boy?
No, I don't think we're ready to do.
Okay, sure, I'll do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, my phone's just about to die.
Okay, so you and Allison, Abby.
Yeah.
Okay, so Allison's going to time you. She's going to give a whack at 1 minute, a whack at 6 minutes, 2 whacks at 7.
You don't do it good.
I like the whack.
So,
Yeah.
can everyone hear
But like super,
Just
super
give it a good one, yeah.
It should probably hurt
There
your
you
hair a
go.
little.
Oh yeah, you're getting it.
There it is. Yeah. So guys, I don't like the clap. This clap happens at a similar pitch to most human speech, while the whack does not, so it will not interrupt anybody speaking and interrupt anybody's ability to hear. So, you know, that's the thing that I have. Anyway, I have the power to do that, and I will. So yeah. Thank you. All right. Perfect. So, I'd like to call this House to order on the motion that this House believes that the European Commission should seize Greece's sovereignty until their financial issues have stabilized, or something that is close enough to that you all understand that to be the debate that we're going to be having. I'd like to call Patrick, the Prime Minister, to begin this round. Here, here. Oh, Pratik, my bad. I just saw those letters and just made a decision. That is my bad. All right. Off we go.
Mr. Speaker, Greece is a country which has a lot of historical background, which has a lot of history relating to how there's three amazing gods, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon. However, lately in the current past decades, we see that Greece has been causing a lot of problems to the European Union and to the European countries as a whole. And in order to ensure that these problems caused by Greece do not extend further, we on side government propose the motion that the European Commission in this House, which is the European Union, will form a commission whereby we say that delegates from different countries which have a vested interest and which are part of the European Union will form a commission whereby they take over the governmental policies, whereby they make decisions on behalf of the government, whereby they make decisions on how the financial resources of Greece are allocated within the country, specifically on where they invest, on which companies they invest, how they invest in their public policies, and how their money is going to be used. So this is the type of sovereignty that the European Union is going to infringe on, and it's not about the justice system. We are not going to infringe on any other parts of Greece, such as their justice system, or directly affect on how people work. We are just going to take into account the financial resources that Greece has to ensure that Greece makes proper financial decisions. But right now I'm talking to you about the generic financial problems that Greece has caused. However, I know I have not provided you proper statistics, but I'm going to provide you those proper statistics in my argumentation and tell you how that's actually detrimental to the European Union on what the problems Greece is actually causing right now, not only to their people, but also the European Union on a general. And we see that there are these two types of problems on not only on a microeconomic level for the people, but also on the macroeconomic level. And when we see that there's these two potential harms that these parties are facing, we think that sovereignty at all costs should be infringed on. And the fact that Greece has been given the opportunity in the past to ensure that they come up with proper financial plans, and the fact that they have not been able to do so, the fact that despite being given a few weeks to come up with a proper financial plan, and despite that being delayed on not providing these financial plans, we think that it's about time that Greece should not be given the power to take their own decisions. Rather, a commission should be formed by the European Union and the delegates within them that have vested interests to ensure that Greece fulfills its responsibility, not only to the people, but fulfills its responsibility to the European Union itself.
So when you're saying that, can you clarify what you mean by when the European Commission is taking over the Greek economy? Does that mean to request funds, the Prime Minister has to request funds from the European Commission? Can you clarify that?
No, when we say that the European Commission is going to take over the running of the government in terms of their financial resources, we say that the funds that Greece has already been provided and the funding that Greece is going to be provided for the next few months, we think that the European Commission is going to take over that and ensure that these financial resources that Greece has been given right now are properly allocated to ensure that the Greek economy functions properly, and that they come out of the problems which I will be stating in my argument. Now, moving on to my argument on the effect of people on how infringe on their sovereignty at this point of time is crucial and is going to help the people. My first point on the effect of people is what is the exact situation on Greece, and here I'm going to provide you some certain statistics on what the current situation in Greece is. The situation in Greece right now is that the GDP to debt ratio is almost as high as 300%. Mr. Speaker, we see that the amount that the GDP is actually producing, which is the gross domestic product, is much lesser than the debt that they owe to other countries. And this, we think, is highly problematic because not only does this indicate the fact that the Greek economy is not able to function, the fact that their people are not able to produce, the fact that they are not able to produce the economy, this also shows that they have borrowed too much from other countries and that they are not being able to repay this money to other countries. And here we see problem on two levels. The fact that they are not able to fulfill their role to the people themselves by functioning the economy properly, and secondly, we see that they are not able to fulfill their responsibilities to the European Union and not repay back the funds that they had received from them. Moreover, on the unemployment statistics, we see that Greece has been facing almost 20 to 30% of unemployment, and this is not just based on last year or in the beginning of this first quarter. We see that that unemployment ratio with the unemployment percentage within Greece has been consistently increasing since the 2008 financial crisis, and we see that although the other countries are en route on in a way stabilizing the economy, Greece has actually been detrimenting over the past few years, and we think that that's highly problematic. Secondly, on my second point on how it's not fulfilling the role of the government. Mr. Speaker, the role of the government is to ensure that the people are well provided for, to ensure that their needs are being taken care of, to ensure that first and foremost that they have been given proper jobs, to ensure that they're able to sustain their livelihoods more properly. The fact that the unemployment is consistently reducing, and the fact that the Greek government is not able to allocate its financial resources to ensure that the people are being given these jobs, or like for example invest in firms to ensure that they don't fall back and so that the people don't lose their jobs. We see that the Greece government is not fulfilling that responsibility at all, and this is highly problematic because the people are firstly not able to provide for their basic livelihoods. Secondly, and if the people are not able to provide for their basic livelihoods, we think that that's basically in a way taking away their sustenance from themselves. And when the government is not able to fulfill that duty, we think that in a way when the European Commission does infringe on this right of providing or allocating financial resources, we think that they'll be able to do a better job on how they allocate their resources. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, by imposing a commission, we are not taking away the rights of the people or the rights of the government to carry out its justice system or its legal system. We are only ensuring that the financial system is being monitored, is being taken over by the European Commission, and this is actually beneficial because even in Greece we see that there are protests taking in Greece, and we see that the people themselves are not happy with the government, and the fact that the government is not able to reform itself, we think that that's highly problematic, and a third party intervention in this case is extremely essential. And the fact that the Greek government, despite having these protests, despite having external pressure, despite having consistent remarks from the European Union, is not able to correct itself, we think that the Greek government is essentially is not able to fulfill its responsibility, and the European Commission, which consists of different delegates from all countries who have vested interests, we think that they'll be able to make some rational decisions for Greece. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, my partner is going to talk about how Greece on Commission is going to affect on a macroeconomic level and show you that Greece is actually, this intervention will actually be successful. So the fact that there's negative effects on people currently in status quo, and the fact that the European Commission will be able to make a rational decision, we urge you to go inside government.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Excellent start. Super fun debate. Now, Josh, the leader of the opposition, here, will mount his verbal assault on the government. It's 112. Yeah, it's like a dance move. It's really slow. It's 7 minutes long. All right, at your leisure.
Anyone not ready?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
All right.
Sorry, can you give me a second?
Yeah, let's-
Oh, okay.
Sorry about
What a gentleman, Josh.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's your bad, dude.
that. I'm sorry.
No, don't trip. This is Josh's world. We're just living in it for the next second.
Okay, we recognize and basically concede all of the arguments that come out of the PM speech about how Greece is like a big systemic problem that's happening in the Eurozone, and how we recognize that there's an issue that both parties are hurting because of the economic problems that are happening in the Eurozone because of the fact that Greece. And what we're gonna, what I want to explain to you is that the reason for this is because of the fact that Greece's economy, the way that their industry is set up, is very sensitive to the stability of the Eurozone. So when it fluctuates just slightly, the Greek economy, suffers like huge detriment to that, and that's what causes the whole problem. So in light of that, what we on the opposition here are going to propose to you is a countermodel. The countermodel being that Greece will leave the Eurozone. We have a couple of justifications for that. The first argument, first of all, economic sovereignty is good, and this is basically going to counter all of the arguments that come out of the PM speech that explain to you that the economic sovereignty is actually a bad thing and how Greece is actually screwing it up and things like that. Okay, first of all, in examining the ontology of the Greek sovereignty, sovereignty of their nation, we recognize that the framework set up by the resolution is to impede on their sovereignty to do so. We recognize that this is a bad thing, and we have a few justifications for explaining why this is a bad thing. First of all, austerity bad. The financial dependence on the Eurozone that I explained to you in the background information, when it comes to the recognition of the sensitivity based on the industrial setup of the framework, also the personal economy that they can maintain, how they actually have a huge dependence on the Eurozone and the stability of it. We recognize that the austerity that is being proposed by the affirmative team is actually a bad thing because one, they're all in the same boat and they still have to maintain their own health throughout the whole thing, and they don't have Greece's main interest in mind, and that's a huge problem when it comes to the personal sovereignty of Greece. And then the second is that the Eurozone's dependency as a part of the Eurozone is a huge problem, and if Greece has to keep their interests in mind, and that's why they need to separate from the Eurozone. The second justification for this is stability, and we have 3 points to this. The first point is economic dependence, and keep flowing across the same economic justification. Stability is a huge... yeah, before I go to the next point,
I actually just want to clarify, are you on to your second argument, or is this still under economic
This is still under the economic sovereignty good argument. I'm making justifications for that.
Okay.
Yeah, the first justification, austerity bad. Second justification is stability. So the second argument under stability, we're looking at political stability. When we recognize the fact that the Prime Minister comes up to you and makes it very clear that, they still maintain all of the justice system things, and they can still maintain policy, but what we're bringing to you is the recognition of the loss of economic sovereignty and how that's a huge political issue. What we want to bring to you and help you to recognize here is that the political stability is a huge issue because they cannot allocate their funds to best fit their own personal needs. And this is a huge issue when it comes to how how they want to conduct policymaking, how they want to spend their money in order to best fit their needs in particular, and not to like better fit the entire Eurozone and like how that operates and things like that. So there's huge political instability when you lose the power of economic sovereignty. The third argument under stability is social stability. When we recognize what the people are perceiving the government. Now, when we recognize the loss of economic sovereignty, what we're seeing here is that the people are recognizing that the government can't take care of their stuff. They can't control their own and maintain their own economic sovereignty. They can't maintain their own government manner, the responsibility that they have to uphold that comes out of the affirmative team. And the importance of that. Right, because the perception is false. It's a false perception. When we recognize the fact that the Greece economy is highly dependent on the stability of the Eurozone, and we recognize that the fishing industry and the way that it operates doesn't actually depend so heavily on like their own control, what we're recognizing is that there's a social stability against the government and the trust of the government to be able to like maintain that image, when actually it's not actually their fault. So severing from the Eurozone would actually fix all those issues. Okay, now on to the third justification. Before I go on, I'll take that.
Yeah, if Greece is so dependent on the Eurozone, how would leaving help? Wouldn't it make things worse? And secondly, even if they are able to obtain independence, how would they be able to manage that successfully with a systemic problem?
Okay, the systemic problem is the dependency on the Eurozone. The problem is that Greece does not actually control their own financial burdens, even if they are a part of the Eurozone. And what this does is it severs that link between being involved in the Eurozone, and it allows Greece to develop themselves and control their own financial sovereignty. And that's critically important when we're recognizing like the rights of Greece and the frameworks that we set up to you about how Greece needs to maintain their own sovereignty, and their perception should not be based on the like background that the dependency on the Eurozone. So yeah, that's huge. The third point is personal discernment, the involvement in our own affairs. When we recognize the Greek responsibility to do their own thing, maintain their own financial stability, maintain their financial development, and that can only be done if they sever the dependency. Fourth is transparency. When we recognize like what the Greece government needs to do and like responsibility to the people, and yeah. The fifth is accountability. When we have a like big European commissioner controlling all of Greece, we don't have the same accountability to the people because Greece is responsible to their own people. The European commissioner is responsible to everybody. So there's not that same accountability. The last argument that my partner is going to get into is the effect on the Eurozone and how the perception of the simple perception of the failing Eurozone is going to increase the sanction on other nations, and how that is going to be bad for the benefit of the Eurozone as a whole.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Now we invite Shireen, the Deputy Prime Minister, looks like I got close enough, to defend her partner's honor and extend this side of the debate. Fire when ready.
While Greece is known for their gods Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, I don't think those gods can do anything to help the problem that's in Greece right now, and specifically Greece leaving the Eurozone won't solve it either, so the only thing that we can do at the end of the round is to have Greece surrender its sovereignty to the European Commission, because that's the only thing that will solve Greece's systemic issues at the end of today's round. But let's look at rebuttals that you'll have. So first I want to note that at the end of the round, it's conceded that like Greece is in a really bad financial state. I think we'll all agree to that. Now we have to see who solves for it best, and we'll see why they don't solve at all. So any improvement, if we have like a 1% chance of solvency, I think you should be voting for the government team, because because we're comparatively advantageous to the status quo, and if we prove your counter model doesn't work, that means we're better, that means you should be voting for the government. But let's look at their counter model, which they base every single argument that they come up on their speech. So if we prove that their counter model is wrong, none of their arguments come into play. So they say that we should have Greece leave the Eurozone, but I think this is specifically bad for a few reasons. First, Greece has a lot of debt to the Eurozone that gets nullified at the point that they leave the Eurozone. So what you can see is that they don't have to pay the 60% of debt that they owe to the Eurozone bad. That's specifically bad for countries who are part of the Eurozone. We think this is bad for not only Greece, but other countries in the Eurozone. That means that the impact is not only on a level for the Greece economy and the Grecian people, but also to other countries in the Eurozone because they're not having their debt repaid back to them. So we can see it's bad for other countries and it's bad for relations with Greece. We think this is the biggest impact at the end of today's round because at the point where Greece is taking this hardline stance and saying fuck the European Union, fuck the Eurozone, and we're basically deciding to leave, that creates bad relations with basically every other country in the Eurozone. We think that's the worst thing we can do for Greece because it means no longer is Greece financially interconnected with other countries, but they're having a big FU to other Greece countries. That's bad because that means Greece gets entangled in more conflict and more problems, and that's a big turn to the affirmative counter proposal. That means that none of their arguments actually solved. That's why you're not even going to be voting for their arguments at the end of today's round. Further, what you can see is that even if you don't believe that too, the problems in Greece aren't fully a cause of the Eurozone. The Eurozone only affects the monetary policy that Greece is able to make, hence it's only a small nature on the policy and financial resources allocated. The whole reason Greece is in the situation it's in is not just because of the Eurozone. I think that's a very band-aid thing to say, oh, it's all because of the Eurozone. First, it's due to their own bad financial planning. We can't allocate, they can't allocate resources in their own financial sector, and we can see that, they said that Greece has the accountability to its own people, but if Greece had the accountability to its own people, it would have done something by now to, solve its problems. Clearly, they don't care. Clearly, people are protesting every single day in Greece to stop the problems, and the Grecian government isn't really doing anything. They're still defaulting on their debts. They're still having these financial problems, and that's a cause of poor allocation in their own, national, industries. That's not a result of the Eurozone, and we think the Eurozone is specifically bad because it creates really bad relations to other countries, and that's why none of their arguments really even matter. But let's look at why it's specifically good for Greece to surrender its sovereignty to the European Commission. Remember my partner's arguments that the situation in Greece is pretty bad, but it affects at the point where we're surrendering the sovereignty, it's good for A, the people, B, society, and B, for the politics of Greece. So at the point where people are protesting and they don't have a stable economy, the unemployment rate is in the 20%, we think at the point where we surrender the sovereignty, we give it to a commission who's better at these policies and is better at financial planning. So let's discuss why the European Commission is specifically better than the Grecian economy in making these decisions. So what we can see is that A, the European Commission solves and is inherently good because of the stakeholders who have a vested interest in Greece's economy. But yeah, I'll take your POI.
Can you name some of those stakeholders?
Germany.
Germany? Okay.
Okay. Germany, yeah. Okay. They have a vested interest in Greece's economy because their debt is intertwined with each other. Numerous other countries as well. That's why they'll help Greece in becoming developing effective strategies to solve the problems because they have a vested interest. But two, I think the European Commission is specifically good because it sends delegates who have empirically created successful financial plans in the past to solve their problems. So what we can see is delegates from Germany will be specifically good in coming up with financial strategies for Greece because they have a good economy. They've historically overcome recession. They know what it's good for the economy. I think that's advantageous to the status quo. That's advantageous to the status quo because Greece clearly can't do practically anything. But the new argument and why it's specifically good for Greece to surrender its sovereignty is that it sets the stage for future effective policymaking in Greece, and I think it provides a model for a self-sustaining Greece in the future. So at the point where we're removing the sovereignty in the status quo, that's only temporary. And in the future, Greece will have like sovereignty, and we think that it's important for Greece to have like this adequate model of what policies actually work and what policies actually don't work for them to like make their economy better. And we think at the point where I've proven that the European Commission like effectively solves and is a good actor to do this, we can see that we'll have a model for why like financial models of how Greece can have a better economy in the future. Clearly Greece has been in recession since like early 2000s. They're not coming up with good policies to do so. It's not all due to the Eurozone, and I think that's specifically why having delegates come together to like create policies that will help Greece is specifically good. We think the actor, the European Commission, is good to help stabilize the financial situation. So what you can see as the end of the round is their counter model, which they rely every single argument, they concede the fact that Greece's situation is bad, and they concede my partner's arguments, but they say that leaving the Eurozone will somehow magically solve all the problems, but we've proven that this only creates more problems. And you can see that it's specifically good to surrender its sovereignty to the European Commission because, one, the European Commission empirically stalls because they have stakeholders, they have delegates who know how to do things. Two, I think it's specifically good for the people and the social society in Greece. And three, this sets the stage for better policy making for a better Greece in the future.
All right. Now, we'd like to welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Sergio, to do battle for his side. All right. At your leisure, man. No.
Mr. Speaker, the previous person comes up here and talks to you and tells you that that we basically conceded every argument and that we're not giving you a solution to this. But she seriously comes up here and she responds and she doesn't link any of our arguments to how that's actually going to be bad. She just has this overall assumption, right? We're not saying that we're going to go back to trading shells or lampoons. We're giving them their own economy. What we're trying to do here is give them sovereignty, because without sovereignty, they're really they're not a nation. They're just a part of something else. They lose who they are, right? So basically, what's happening here is that yes, they do have a bad situation, but it's only going to make it worse, because what's going on in the status quo is that their problems stem from the euro, because they know that they have someone to bail them out. This is why they have so much debt, because they're well, if they're just going to keep on giving us money, or we could keep on making debt. This is essentially what has happened all this time. So what are we going to do to fix this, Mr. Speaker? What we're bringing to you is to leave this, give them back the drachma, and allow them to rebuild their nation from the bottom up. Is this easy? No. But is it going to take time? Yes. We're trying to give you the broader spectrum of the scale here. We're not just trying to say what's going to happen right now. We give you, I'll give you at the bottom of this. We're not trying to say what's going to happen right now. We're saying that this is a part of a longer plan. I'll take your point in the back half.
Yeah, please explain how by going back to the drachma and then having to rebuild the nation would be easier than rebuilding the nation while staying within the Eurozone.
Because what's happening in the Eurozone, as I previously stated, is that they have a dependence on it. If you take away that dependence from them, they have nothing else but to learn to stay on their own. If they have people that are in bad situations and making bad decisions, take them out of there and give people that can make good decisions that are from their country and not from the Eurozone, because they have vested, the Eurozone is just going to be, they have their own vested interest. I'll take you at the top.
Okay, have people from Greece who've had a vested interest solved in the past 15 years, solved their problems?
If they haven't solved their problems now, does that mean that they're never going to solve their problems? Are they completely helpless forever? You're making this assumption that they're going to be helpless forever. There's nothing wrong with the Grecian people. Not at this time. There's nothing wrong with the Grecian people. There's someone that's going to come along that can do this and give them sovereignty to their own nation. Alright, so my partner Josh comes up here and he says that austerity is bad. When there's dependence on the euros, we're all in the same boat. Greece, it's not in Greece's main interest. What we're trying to do here on a microeconomic level, as they want to talk about, is that we're trying to give the people the power, right? They come up here and they say that they're not gonna it's not gonna affect their political sphere of influence, but whoever has the money makes the decisions. Like, in order to run government, like, you need money into, like, campaigns or whatnot. Like, they're gonna have influence on Greece's policies, right? Like, it's absurd to think that this isn't gonna happen. Like, this is just an inevitable fact if they keep dependent on the euro and they just give up their sovereignty for economic reasons. Stability. Like, economic policy, like, they're not in for their personal needs, right? Like, they're not in for Greece's personal needs. They're in for, like, their own personal needs. Social stability. Like, this is another thing that my partner brought up as a sub point. Government can't take care of their stuff. Like, you're basically giving the perception that, like, they're helpless. Like, this is essentially what's going on in the status quo. You're saying that, like, hey, these people can't take care of their stuff, so, like, this is just what's gonna happen. So, this is a systemic problem. Like, it doesn't control the economic burden, right? Like, with the development of themselves, like, the systemic problem, essentially, like, what we're trying to do is eradicate the systemic problem. Because at this point, what has happened is that the system has been set in place and it has failed, right? Like, somebody pissed Poseidon off, and now they're shipping, their shipping industries, and, like, their fishing industries have gone bad, alright? So, like, let's just make it cool by giving them their sovereignty back, and Poseidon will be alright. That's what we're trying to advocate here for. Last point.
So shipping and fishing industries, which rely heavily on tourism and trade, you want to disconnect them from the local area they're surrounded by?
I don't understand how you're connecting from the local area to that. Like, you could, like, if you want to travel to another place, can you not, like, transfer money? Like, is this, like, such a huge deal? Like, are we saying that they're, like, you're not going to be able to access the drachma? Like, how is this such a big deal? I don't understand where you're coming from, but thank you for that. They the front half comes up here and they give up their analysis on why Greece will fail. Like, they just say that Greece is going to fail, but they never give you any actual impacts on how Greece is going to fail. Like, just because they don't want to give up their sovereignty, they're going to fail. Like, this is literally what came out of her previous speech. So this is not what's going to happen. So I want to give you, like, this bigger view of, like, what's happening, of what's going to happen in Greece if we do allow them to keep their sovereignty and go back to their system of money, which was being the drachma, or, yeah, I mean, name it whatever you want if we want to just change it, right? Like, this isn't that big of a deal. What's going to happen when you give them back their sovereignty is that they're going to become a stronger nation, and they're going to be able to, like, just keep moving forward as they progress. And how's this going to happen? We already said that they have shipping and fishing industries. Like, this is what they heavily rely on, right? Like, if we allow them to go back to being a self-sovereign nation, and they can make their own decisions, they're going to be able to build themselves from the ground up, and being from the ground up is actually a better start than to keep this reliance, as we had already previously stated. Like, what's going to happen is that when there's no reliance on the euro, like, they know that they don't have the safety net that essentially has been there from the beginning. So this actually forces, like, the sink or swim mentality. Like, you're either going to make good decisions and keep going, or, like, you're going to fail. Like, this kind of breeds, like, a better mentality for, like, the state. So this perception that they have that, like, the government can't take care of things will actually be shifting. Like, it'll be a huge cultural shift that's going to go on due to the fact that now they're going to be able to take care of their business, essentially. So, second point that I want to make is that that they're going to bring is that if they on a macroeconomic level, it's actually going to be better for them, because if they have their own control over their money and, like, their value system, like, they're not going to be stuck in, like, somebody else's monetary policy. They're going to be able to, like, dictate, like, trade agreements and, like, anything that has to do around with monetary policies, and they're going to be able to actually have a higher value to their money, which is actually going to in turn help them with their with every industry that they have in Greece, and then, like, tourism and everything. Like, this is all in their benefit. There is no negatives to this, and I don't understand why, like, the other team does not understand this. For all these reasons, you will be voting for our team. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the top half of this debate. To kick off the party in the back, we invite Dennis, the member of government, to give a speech defending his positions. Whatever you're ready now.
Is everybody ready? Okay, so as we get into the bottom half and we're left with this counter plan versus the primary plan, what we're going to show you today is why the systemic problem in Greece is unrelated to the euro, how the opposition really hasn't shown that, but we're going to show specifically why the systemic problem is on the Greek government and unrelated to the euro, and then we're going to show you basically what is the result of the counter model? If you look at the idea of leaving the European Union, and what we're going to argue for is the resulting financial collapse, even worse than Greece already is, will result in, and we're going to talk about the effects of why being with the euro is a good thing, and all of the things you will lose that can cause an economic collapse by leaving the eurozone. So I'm going to start off with some refutation, and then I'm going to get into the systemic issue, and then why the euro is a good thing. So starting off with the refutation, the deputy leader of opposition says that none of the points they brought up to were replied. So I'm going to go reply to them. Okay, first of all, the idea of sensitive to the euro. This is just empirically false. Like, currencies are not like resources. Like, they seem to misunderstand that, but also a lot of the problems with the Greek government that I'm going to get more into are based on far left policies and a highly dependent economy on shipping and tourism that will not change based on changing a currency. And then I'm going to respond to all the points in the economic sovereignty. First of all, austerity bad. No, austerity is not bad. It's necessary. Like, that's like saying when you lend money, or a bank lends money to you and you pay back for your car or whatever, that's a bad thing. No, giving back money is not inherently bad. It's inherently necessary, and this is necessary to end the debt that is within the eurozone. Additionally, this idea of stability, I really don't know where they get this idea. Like, it kind of sounds good in, like, on theory or, like, appealing to our pathos that be on your own, be independent, be strong by yourself. It's like, that's not how economies work. Economies work the exact opposite. The more interconnected an economy is with the globalized world, especially as the world is getting increasingly globalized, that's a good thing. That's getting better. Then also the idea of the bad image of the government. This is the third point. Okay, this already exists. Like, I don't think anyone can possibly buy that by taking the last bit of sovereignty for a nation that can't already handle its budget or its policies, that is suddenly going to be a huge perception shift. And frankly, we think that even if you buy this argument that you're going to make the perception for the Greek people a little worse of their government, it's not significant, and the impacts are going to be far outweighed. And then the idea of transparency. Okay, why? Like, when did the government state that we're going to have, like, this commission's going to make all their decisions secretive, and we're going to hide from you where the money is, we're going to put it in a little vault and not tell you where it's at? Like, no, they're just making decisions in the interests of the Greek debt and the European Union that has not been met by the current government. Accountability. The government isn't accountable now. Like, a lot of the problems they're talking about are the Greek government. They're not because Greece is with the Eurozone, they're because that's how the Greek government has been. And with that, I'd actually like to get into our first point of positive matter, which explains how this issue is systemic. So first of all, I'd like to say that these financial problems have begun since 2008 significantly. The open half talked about the 20 to 30% inflation, but why exactly has Greece had so much trouble? And that's what we're going to get into. So first of all is some of the far left policies they've had. For example, the retirement age was set at 50. There was an abundance of social programs that essentially the government couldn't handle. Welfare programs, additional investment in local areas, that kind of thing, that the government, the budget was not significant enough to handle. In fact, the recently elected prime minister, as part of Syriza, or Syriza is their far left party, has actually been against austerity. He's against paying back the European Union. And see, that's why this plan is a necessity and why their plan's a problem, because it's the Greek government that has the issue right now. The other issue is the idea of the economy that rests on tourism and shipping. These are very interconnected trades, and because of that, when the world economy slips the slightest bit, Greece is affected dramatically, and that's why they're particularly sensitive to the economic problems that occurred in 2008. And so, actually, with that, I would like to get into this idea of like why the euro is a good thing, and why it vastly outweighs going to your own currency. I think I've already talked about like why a lot of the things they don't apply, but now I'm going to go on the offense and explain explicitly like why is the euro good with 5 points. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the idea of an optimum currency area. And this is the idea that when you have a close geographic area of constantly trading and interacting with one another, it is optimum to have a single currency. An example of this that we saw where it totally failed to have multiple currencies was the Articles of Confederation. And keep in mind, when states were created in the United States and they all had different currencies, this caused vast economic problems. And keep in mind, a lot of the countries in Europe are the size of states in the United States. And so you have that same issue occurring. This has also been supported by Robert Mundell, a Nobel Prize-winning economist who talks about the importance of being able to share risks. And see, that's going to be a key point in this round, because when you're considering the plan versus the counterplan, think about it like this way. So we are taking some sovereignty and trying to solve this massive debt issue. And they're saying, well, this never would have happened if they didn't have the euro. What if they just had their own currency? No, if they didn't have their own currency, then you wouldn't have debt because they would never have been able to be saved. They would have instead just had collapse. Let's keep in mind where this debt came from. This debt came from the fact that they were with the euro and were able to partake in this risk-sharing model. If they couldn't share this risk with the rest of the European Union, they couldn't have been helped. And so that's what's important, is they benefited from this euro, and that's why this plan is attacking the debt problem. An additional aspect we want to talk about is the idea of investment. There's been a 5% increase in physical investment in the Eurozone since Europeans increased. 20% stock value in the 4 years after introducing the euro, and 22% increase, or excuse me, 22% of investment in countries that have poor currencies or weak currencies, such as the drachma, is accounted for by the introduction of the euro. Studies found every one of those things. The fourth thing I'd like to talk about is the idea of exchange rate risk, which is the risks that occur in the industries that take advantage of different currency rates in closed areas. And the final thing I'm going to talk about that I think correlates particularly to Greece is the idea of tourism. They have an economy that rests heavily on this, and the euro has shown a 10% overall increase in tourism in Europe since the introduction of the euro. So you have Greece essentially saying, risking every one of these things, all of these economic benefits, and basically just going for financial collapse, because as stated, they wouldn't even have debt right now. They'd have absolute collapse if it wasn't for being in the euro in the first place. And so you're weighing that side is the opposition versus the government, which is proposing finishing this debt problem by putting the sovereignty in the people who understand the issue and have the best interests in mind. And so you have undoubted economic reasoning and a clear case about why the euro is a good thing, why they need to stay with the euro, and why the plan is a good thing. So even if you, regardless of what they say about the plan, I can almost guarantee you the counter plan is worse, because financial collapse is worse than anything we've dealt with thus far. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I'd now like to invite Salar to come up and defend the opposition position, which I guess would be to go on offense against the government position.
Well, thanks for guiding that. I really don't want to do it.
I'll deal with this.
So, whenever you're ready.
He's a thinker.
Set.
Good, good.
Mr. Speaker, there's been a lot of splashing back and forth between both sides in this opening half, and not a lot of substance. What I'd like to get into now is a little bit of rebuttal, lightweight, of what government has said today. Specifically, what they said about the fact that German delegates will know how to help Greece because they are stakeholders, right? So to address this point, I wanted to get a bit of history of the current crisis, right? So what we have in Greece today, what side government is proposing today is that that Greece hand control of its nation over to the French, over to the Germans, over to the Scandinavians, everyone but the Greeks, right? And this is not just hand over, this is forcibly seize the sovereignty of the Greeks. But more importantly, we have to understand that these countries, these nations that are part of the Eurozone, were the ones that directly led to the crisis currently occurring in Greece, right? The EU instituted the dreadful austerity measures that government keeps harping on as great things. No, Mr. Speaker, these austerity measures took Greece from bad to worse. They utterly destroyed that economy and put them where they are today. Not at this time. Bad to worse. And now government wants to put control of Greece's sovereignty and its economy back into the hands of the people who messed it up in the first place, who instituted those terrible austerity measures. We're like, oh, they have a terrible track record, but let's give it back to them because, oh, maybe they'll do better the second time. I'm not in favor of that at all. And on top of that, there's also the concept that the Greece is being seized by the European Union as punishment for a bad economy is ludicrous, right? For one, like I said earlier, a large part of Greece's current crisis is due to the Eurozone austerity measures, right? That's a given. But also, and two, the morbid economic state of Greece before the austerity measures, which government said was the reason for the austerity measures, was as a result of the 2008 world economic crisis, right? Everyone was affected by that economic crisis. And what government here is telling you is the Eurozone is going to punish Greece for what the Eurozone is telling, what the government is telling us today is the Eurozone is basically punishing Greece for not rebounding as fast as other nations from the 2008 world crisis. That is absolutely false. It is ridiculous that they could do something like that. Right? So Greece is a largely agrarian-based economy, right? They mentioned tourism, but agrarian-based is the main portion of Greece's economy. That is what they are built on. So it is expected that if it takes a hit from a large world economic crisis, the hit is going to be bigger, and the rebound is going to take longer than more developed and more robust economies like Germany. We can't just compare Greece to Germany just because they're in the same Eurozone. That is not fair. And so it will take more time for Greece to rebound. But to say that Greece put itself in that crisis, no. This was a world crisis. Everyone was put in this crisis. And some nations rebounded faster than others. So for us to say that Greece is the culprit for its own collapse, no. Is Greece a culprit because it is an agrarian-based economy, because that is how they make money? No, that should not be a fault of a nation for how their economy is built. And then this brings us to an interesting point, is we have to consider why Greece? Why is the government harping on Greece, right? Why not Italy? Why not Spain? Why not Portugal? Why not all these other struggling European economies? Why all of a sudden is all the austerity measures and all the freaking sorry, not freaking. why all of a sudden is the attention being drawn to Greece that we would go to the degree of stripping your sovereignty, as government would say? Why would they choose Greece? It's because the Eurozone has continued to treat Greece like an inferior member of the Eurozone. And to strip it of its sovereignty would be the ultimate insult to Greece, right? Opening Up did a wonderful job of going into how stripping Greece of its economic sovereignty will strike a huge blow to its political stability, correct? Well, to go deeper into that, even if this plan succeeded, let's entertain the thought. Let's entertain the thought that Greece was stripped of its sovereignty, that the Eurozone forcibly took control of its sovereignty. Even if it succeeded, right? And all they're harping on succeeded. They said, oh, we were able to rebound its economy. Its economy is 10 times better than it was before, right? And they give it back to the Greeks. How on the earth are Greeks going to look at their prime minister with any sort of legitimacy? He didn't do anything. All he did was allow the Eurozone to forcibly take the sovereignty of his nation's economy, make the financial decisions for themselves, which is, by the way, the Germans, the French, not the Greeks, to make the decision, and then tell his people, yes, we did. There's going to be severe civil strife from this, because there's no legitimacy with the government. If the government cannot manage its own finances, one of the basic tenets of governance, how on earth do they have any legitimacy? And that is a very important point that government really has not properly addressed today, is that they will not have, even if their plan succeeds, they will never have legitimacy because of having the rug swiped from underneath their feet. Bottom half.
Please explain how a perception shift, please explain how a perception shift is going to outweigh economic impacts of people actually losing jobs and losing their money.
Because, well, the perception shift is what we have right now, is the crisis you have put Greece in because of the austerity measures, because of the Eurozone sanctioned policies, have put Greece where it is, right? So the Greeks are going to create, it's going to cause an even worse perception for Greeks that their government is basically ceding control of their economy to an organization that has already caused them to lose their jobs. The people who are losing their jobs right now, it's because of those crazy austerity measures. It's because of those measures that cut off all benefits to Greece, right? That's the reason they're in that crisis. So don't make this a joke that, the Greeks put themselves in this and coming up here and making Greek god jokes. That's not the reason. The reason Greece is in this crisis, let's not forget, Mr. Speaker, is the Eurozone. So to forget that and say that this issue is because the Greeks put themselves in this is absolutely false. What has happened is Greece is a victim of a world economic crisis, and which was worsened by the Eurozone solutions. And now we're saying that because you didn't do well enough a job recovering from our terrible measures, we're going to punish you even more by taking your sovereignty and put your nation into a deep sense of civil strife and unrest. So for all these reasons, we urge you to vote opposition today. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for that. We now invite Catherine, the government whip, to summarize the government side of the debate and conclude, perhaps, the deal here. So, whenever you're ready, just sign it to it.
Happy to be here.
Oh yeah, we all are.
So, Mr. Speaker and my beautiful panel of judges, I just want to reiterate what we've established today and 3 main points of crystallization. I'm going to bring 2 and 3 questions. So the first one is, why is the euro good? This is specifically going to address all the arguments brought up by side opposition, why their counter model will fail, and why none of their arguments stick through with this. My second question is, why is the surrendering of sovereignty necessary? With this, I'm going to go over my partner's arguments and my opening bench's arguments about why it needs to be another group and why Greece has proven that they do have a systemic issue and that they cannot be the ones to fix this. Like, they've proven in the past, and I'll go over that in just a moment. And the third one is, my third question I have is, like, what is doing the greater good? Is it the model or the counter model? Who is better than the most people in the Eurozone in general? So with all this being said, I'm going to get to the first question about why is the euro good? Opening opposition gets up here and they tell us that we need to just get rid of the euro. Like, they're the cause of all the problems, like we've had in the Eurozone. We need to get Greece out of it and we're going to be out. We're cool. That's just totally and completely false. Like, I don't know how else opening government and my partner need to get up here and explain to you that, like, the euro is not the cause of all of the problems in Greece. They came up here and they explained, let's see, what all did we explain? Oh, basically, like, the financial crisis is the reason for all these issues. It's not because they can't rebound, like back half tells us. It's not because the euro is the cause of all their problems. It's because of continuous poor decision-making by Greece, showing they have a systemic problem with their finances, and that they cannot handle this in their own. My partner gets up here and explains in our first point of positive matter that Greece has a systemic issue. He explained to you that, like, these far-left policies like social welfare programs and the early retirement age is just continuing things that are losing money for Greece and creating the problem and making it even worse. Excuse me. So why can't let's see. Yeah, I'll start. I'll start with that. So this is why, like, I'm switching actually. I'm gonna go with why surrendering sovereignty is necessary. Like we said, they have a systemic issue. They can't be the ones to do this. Opening government got up here and they explained to us so wonderfully that since they have this issue, we need other parties that are going to do this better, who know the finances, who are going to take care of the situation, not only to help Greece, but to help the rest of the Eurozone stay afloat. That's why it has to be another group of stakeholders, not Greece, because they've continuously shown that they cannot be the ones to do this. Now with that, I'm going to go over the counter model and why it just totally falls through. Why the euro is good. Before I move on, I'll take your point.
Yeah, so weren't these stakeholders that you're mentioning in charge of the austerity measures, that they supposedly knew what Greece's economic crisis needed? What was the solution?
Well, like, why did Greece have the austerity measures in the first place? Because they're not paying back the money that they borrowed. Like, this is poor decision-making on Greece's part. That's why the austerity measure, and you guys are just totally skipping over that, saying, oh, it's the Eurozone's fault, they're the ones that are doing it. No, the Eurozone is only doing this because Greece is making poor decisions with their finances. I don't know how much clearer we need to be with that on-site government. But with all that being said, I think that we've established enough over here. I'm going to go on to why the counter model is going to fail and why we need to stick with the euro in Greece, because it's going to do, it's basically better all around. So the counter model says, well, let's just get out of here, Greece. It's caused all the problem. Dennis got up here and he explained, like, the 2 biggest parts of Greece's economy is the shipping industry and tourism. He also explained, like, the exchange rate risk, and, like, if we go back to the drachma, which is such a weak currency, and it's like Greece is doing so bad now, we can only expect it to get worse and worse and worse. Like, all of, like, their issues are just gonna, like, get so much worse. When it's a lot harder to travel when you have to exchange money all the time. So we'll see a lot less travel and tourism in Greece because people don't want to do all these exchanges. They'd rather go somewhere that's easier to get to. So this 10% rise in tourism we saw with the euro, we can expect that to go back down. Like, all these things are, like, they're all interconnected. It's just, it's gonna get worse. I don't know how else to say this. Also, the shipping industry. It makes it a lot. No one wants to trade with a country or like have any issues or relations. Sorry, relations is what I'm working for. They don't have any relationships with a country that is failing financially. They don't want to make all these plans and everything if they know they can't support themselves. They have billions of dollars in bailout money that are given to them and they're not paying it back. Why would anybody want to trade with them in the future? Again, these are all things that are setting Greece up to fail in the long run. So that's why their countermodel just makes everything so much worse. One, we've proven that they can't make any proper decisions on their own because they do have systemic issues with their financial planning. Two, it's just no one's going to want to trade with them because everything is getting worse with these systemic issues. So with all these being said, I want to get into my third question. What does the greater good for the most people? Let's look at the Eurozone as a whole. If Greece goes down and we're still in the Euro, they're all interconnected, it's going to pull other people down with them. That's why other people are joining. That's why we have these stakeholders to build them up. This was the whole point of creating the Euro in the first place. It's been working for 16 years now. We just have to get everybody to the same level like we once were. So if they go down, the rest of the Euro goes down with them. If they leave the Euro, and that's the entire country of Greece failing. They're losing all their money. They don't have anybody to bail them out anymore. They're just done, that's it. And so that's everybody in this country is now affected. We're getting arguments from, the back half about how, sorry, I lost my clock. We're getting arguments from the back half about oh, people will say the Prime Minister doesn't do anything, no one will respect him anymore. But how much are they going to respect him if their entire country fails? This is obviously the better decision because if the perceptional shift is oh, nobody likes him anymore, who cares if you have nothing? So, with all this being said, you have a clear vote for side government for two specific reasons. Obviously, they haven't proven their countermodel at all. All of their arguments are based on this countermodel working, and we have shown you on both sides of our bench how it doesn't. It does not work because they've proven they can't handle the finances themselves. And their economy is weak. Their new currency would be weak. It's just going to make everything worse in the whole problem. The second one, we've also proven to you, with this whole systemic issue argument, why Greece needs a third party to come in and fix all these issues that they're having because they clearly aren't doing it on their own. So, with all this being said, just want to make sure about everything. Like I said, you need to look at who's benefiting the most people, who has net benefits on this side, on both sides of the house. Government has clearly shown on both half of the bench, specifically back half when we brought this systemic issue argument, that we have the most net benefits. We are benefiting not only all of the Eurozone, but all of Greece. And with that, I thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, to close the debate as a whole and summarize her side of the story, Yumi Kim, come on down. Lay it on.
Okay. There are two key questions that this debate should come down to. One, when is it okay to seize a nation's sovereignty? And two, how do you stabilize Greece's financial situation? The second one is only because that's kind of what the crux of this debate ended up talking about. So let me address the first question. When is it okay to seize a nation's sovereignty? Oh my God. Prime Minister, you brought it up in your speech. I really wish you would have sat on and explained this more, but this is what Solar brings you, and this is why it's key. Because there's this huge assumption that yes, it's okay to seize Greece's sovereignty because they have all these problems, right? That's what Prime Minister brings you. He tells you that Greece's financial situation is really bad and it affects the people, and therefore their sovereignty, their very identity as a nation within the global community should just be stripped away from them entirely. So until these financial problems are solved. So yeah, sure, that's your framework, right? But what Solar tells you that ultimately this doesn't here's essentially what's going on. He basically said there's a right to seize sovereignty, but so all right, because there's bad situations. So when have we seen bad situations, and when have like what's happening in Greece, and when have we seen sovereignty violated in the past, right? So when have we seen sovereignty violated? Well, we saw that in Kuwait, right? With Desert Storm, when Americans had to go in, they were all right, screw what you guys think. Your country is completely torn apart by war and conflict, and people are dying constantly. You need help, and we can provide it for you. That's when we've seen sovereignty violated. When have we seen hard times in the past related to Greece? Because clearly Greece's situation is nothing at all like what I just detailed. Their country is not being torn apart by war and conflict. No. What do we see in Greece right now, right? We see a lot of poverty and we see a lot of bad economic times. So what have we seen in the past? Let's go very extreme bad economic times. Great Depression, 1950s, 60s China under Mao, right? Those are horrible economic times in both of those countries. Guess which countries did not have their sovereignty violated? Spoiler alert, it was America and it was China, right? No, not right now. Right, so ultimately, based on what you decide as being okay to invade a nation's sovereignty, no, it just doesn't check out because based on your framework, it doesn't work in past precedent and doesn't work in this situation. We don't think it's ever. We think that when you violate a nation's sovereignty, it needs to be for a very big specific harm, like what was happening in Kuwait, where the entire region was completely being devastated, and the only people who could help were people who had more resources than them. And this is what Solar tells you when he says that the Eurozone was directly responsible for what happened in Greece, right? Everyone outside government was or especially the last speaker, so this is a little bit of drug rebuttal. She basically said, all right, they did austerity because Greece wasn't paying back its debt. Let me tell you guys how austerity works, because I feel like everyone's just throwing it around. No one really talked about it. Here's how austerity works. Basically, Greece wasn't making a lot of money. They had a lot of debt. The Eurozone said, stop spending as much money and then pay back your debt. That's what the austerity measures were. This is how the economy actually works. You make money by spending money. If you put money back into the money supply so other people can then access that money, it's basic economics, right? You make money by spending money. And Greece isn't spending any money, so they're not making any money, so they can't pay back that debt, so that debt keeps getting bigger. No, that's not all theoretical, that's not hypothetical, that's literally what is happening right now. After the austerity measures, Greece's economic situation went even further down the toilet because they couldn't make money to pay back increasing debt. No. Sorry. So anyway, when Solar comes up and tells you about Greece's sovereignty, he tells you okay, let's briefly entertain the fact, like Solar said, that all of the things that government side brought you will actually happen. Which they won't, but let's just briefly entertain this fact. When Solar tells you about Greece's sovereignty, he's telling you that it doesn't matter at all if those benefits actually come true, right? Deputy Prime Minister says, if we can prove to you there's a 1% chance of any of this helping, that'll be our side winning. No, that's no, that's just this is basic utilitarianism versus deontology, right? Government side takes utilitarianism. Oh, we have more benefits than you, that makes us better. No, we're taking the deontological standpoint. That's what Solar brings you. He tells you that it doesn't matter if you get all these benefits. It doesn't matter if your benefits outweigh our benefits. Morally, it's wrong to invade a nation's sovereignty. Morally, it's wrong to seize a nation's sovereignty and to say that, hey, I know we totally screwed you over in the past. We're totally screwing you over now. Why don't you just give us your entire control and hope that we won't screw you over again? No. And you know what? I really want to address the fact that they tell you that Germany has all of these stakes in Greece, which is why Germany will know what's best for Greece. Let's talk about real quick how these austerity measures got placed in the first place. Unless you Germany clearly does not have that much of a stake in Greece, because guess who has the biggest stake in the Eurozone? Germany. Guess who enforced austerity measures on Greece that made its economy from bad to worse? The Eurozone. Whoa, Germany basically screwed over Greece. Germany clearly does not know what's best for Greece's economy. All of that was just blatantly false, I guess. But before I get on to my next question, sure, I'll take Tom.
Okay, firstly, you're misrepresenting us when we are saying that the Commission should take complete control over Greece. We are not saying that. We're saying only financial resources. Secondly, when you put austerity measures, you are telling Greece that you should stop spending money uselessly. We are not telling you should stop spending overall.
I think opening government did a decent job of telling you why that if you undermine a prime minister or a leader's financial sovereignty, you undermine their political sovereignty. And then Solar did a little bit more of development of that as to why what happens when political sovereignty gets undermined. No more. Ultimately, your point about that, doesn't fully stand, because, as Solar, detailed to you, when you undermine economic sovereignty for, a leader, you're ultimately undermining their entire control, because money controls everything. So if you lose control of the money, you're screwed. So the second point that, I don't feel should have been the most important thing, but, somehow became the most important thing, was how do you stabilize Greece's financial situation, right? This whole round kind of became, this weird pissing contest of, there's problems in Greece. My plan's better than yours. My plan's better than yours. But I kind of already showed you why closing opposition necessarily brings you it doesn't matter whose plan is better. It's immoral just to take Greece's sovereignty. But let's talk about what happened, right? So when Solar comes up here and tells you very clear that the Eurozone was directly responsible for what happened in Greece, I think he makes it pretty clear that all of government's like points about how like, oh, the European Union will know better, the Eurozone will know better, just like fall, like entirely. So like it doesn't matter if like our benefits are like super like probable or like very small percentage of happening. Government side doesn't really happen at all. Like, so what you get here at the end of the day is like a plan that says they'll work, but based on past precedent and what actually happened won't. And what you get is ultimately Solar bringing you that deontologically, this like taking a nation's sovereignty should not happen, and really is not applicable in this situation at all. So closing opposition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that exciting time in my life. Now, you guys cross the house and shake hands, become friends once more, where we once had enmity, and then leave. I was a debater. I hated craning my neck backwards to stare at chairs and would just sit where they were the whole time. Inconveniencing. And honestly, I think it's affected my health. So I will do this for you.
I appreciate it.
Sam does things for the children. Anyway, so...
Or does things.
Or do things for myself. This is a comfortable chair. Now anyway, here's how the round broke down. I can either tell the story of the round and then give you rankings, but I know that every debater hates that, so I won't do that. Basically, here's how it happened. We have the 4 to opening opposition, the 3 to closing government, the 2 to opening government, and the 1 to closing opposition. So there we are. The 4, okay. In this format of debate, counterprops are discouraged for the reason that you did yours. Now, normally when you're doing a counterprop in this style of debate, like I heard that maybe there was like some sort of confusion debriefing regarding counterproposals, but a counterproposal at best in this format should either be to correct a huge externality of the debate created by an opening government team. I'm just pointing at you as like a reference, not that you did that in this debate. But it's yeah, like you know, it's like instead of debating about the Eurozone, they said, well, I have a chicken named Greece, I have a dog named European Commission, and I think the dog should eat the chicken for dinner tomorrow. That would be like the type of model. It's like, we obviously need to counterpropose against that. That is a ridiculous notion. What you guys did was you just created an entirely new debate, and ironically, all of your argumentation was about this debate. So you literally, if you didn't do the counterprop, which then forces your partner to support the counterprop, rather than having all this nice argumentation about sovereignty and the things it creates as an economic force, like, those things were all really good arguments. You were talking about how when you do take away the power of the purse, you're inherently taking away the power of the pen and the law. Like, these things are interconnected. Like, and you could have done that, but ultimately, you then pigeonhole yourself into this position where you now have to support going back to the drachma, where, as everyone else in the round is pointing out, you have a country that, no matter whose fault it is, austerity, or just bad banking, or just, you know, like corrupt officials, like, you've had bonds above 30% for like the last 7 years. Like, that currency is going to be like toilet paper. It's going to be worthless. Like, why would you, like doing that would just be like the death knell, like, for the Greek economy. They were just right about that. And you created a huge burden for yourself that you just didn't need to have. So the 3 happens because they created their island, and instead of just saying, oh my god, look at that island, we're on debate land, they're on their new island, you swam out to the island to meet them at a certain point, which was just a huge tactical error, especially because you had so much good material about why we would impinge on sovereignty in these certain situations. You then spent the majority of your speech talking about why the euro is good, where at best the euro is a neutral force in this round, which was ironically I think what you were trying to point out. But it's like, you basically spend the majority of your speech talking about, you know, the virtues of the euro. By the end, I'm convinced that the euro is a fantastic thing, but ultimately, you know, the analysis about Syriza is limited to like 1 sentence that's ultimately like doesn't allow us to go and explore that whole catastrophe that's going on, where you then have all the impacts that they're trying to point out here, with tangible examples, excellent speaking, and all of these things that were really making me excited, but then just went in this other direction that then just didn't gel with what the round was supposed to be about. So ultimately that ends up happening, that then cascades into an effect which obviously affects the whip speech, like, which then, you know, kind of makes that ball dominant territory happen there, you know, and it's just not great, you know, to go and engage the team that, you know, seems out of the round. So, well, you know, you both made just one tactical error that just kind of was a huge besmirchment on, you know, the appellation of having any sort of like justification for why your speech was doing. So I'm sorry to reveal that to you. I mean, really, it just seems like you guys are really good speakers. You guys are all really charismatic and excellent, excellent at talking. You're all obviously very intelligent. It just seems like it's a growing pain from a style adjustment, really, more than anything. Questions at the end. Now, second place and first place. You guys get second place because you didn't do your model and I hate saying this, but it's the only way I can phrase it, is that the model you picked wasn't the model you should have picked. Now, I'm not saying that there's like a right way and a wrong way to debate. I do not believe that. If there's more than one way to skin a cat, there has to be millions of ways to debate. But like, when you're looking at like how you did this, you really like had this pusillanimous stance when you could have had a very aggressive, assertive one. And the aggressive, assertive one is what you need from opening government in order to create the most arguments in the round that are then the soundest for your position. So ultimately, you guys were both very good at creating sound arguments. I think that you could, and really, like, I don't think that having a total takeover would have affected your argumentation so much. I think it just sounded like a really insane idea, so you didn't want to do it. And that's what ultimately pigeonholed you in a position, which by the end of the round, it's pointed out over and over again by closing up, it's happening anyway. If you take away the power of the purse, and closing up, and anyway, if you take away the power of the purse, you then take away the power of them to make policy, the power to like do everything. So it's like, and the other thing too is like, they basically have already taken over the financial situation in like limited capacity, sure, but in a similar capacity to what you're talking about if you don't want them to have any interference on laws. They already are stipulating bailout money, and exchange programs for having these sorts of things. So that, it's like, you don't have a direct control over it, but you do have a guy menacingly glaring from the corner in Greece, then saying, about those policies, and that's, or maybe, about those policies, that's more accurate. But yeah, so that's really, what ends up happening anyway. That's what goes on there. Here, at the beginning of this, I was, kind of, calling out for like, okay, we need the debate to get back on track. You guys reset the situation. From the beginning of Solar's speech, we see that we have austerity being forced on the Greeks, and it's creating a bad situation. Now, all of your other points about it being like it's an agrarian economy that's hit harder than most other economies, which yes, it's hard for them to recover from, especially given ecological disasters in the Mediterranean that all also happen, like simultaneously with the financial crisis. Like you have, you piggyback off of this too, where it's like shipping and fishing are two industries that are really dependent on economic activity as a precipitator for those industries. So like if you're not having a good economy, you're not going to be shipping anything. And if you're not shipping anything, you don't have a good economy. At the point where the chicken and the egg have both been simultaneously destroyed, like there's nothing to happen there. Like, good analysis. Like, what I was kind of weirded out about was when you're talking about the perception shift. And like, why the perception shift is the important thing. Now, when you're saying that it's because you're literally going to piss everybody off by having them seize power, which is, for lack of a better word, actually, we're not lacking better words, I'm just lazy. Like when you're looking, at those sorts of things, when you're saying the perception shift is why, like, you don't want this seizure of power. Like, yeah, like everyone's getting incredibly angry. Like, there's tons of public unrest in Greece. Like, there's tons of stuff like that. I think you just need to go and like have that be the contextualized issue that you present us. Where it's like, look, you're already saying there's a country with 20% unemployment that now, like, they all just voted in an election, like, just not very long ago. The ink's still drying on the ballots, and you're saying, psych, we're gonna have a dictatorship that's run by those people that you hate. And I thought that was really good analysis. It just seems like it's a really terrible idea to have those people have that. And then you kind of separates when you start analyzing the situation of what this austerity really looks like. What this austerity then, creates this sort of political and humanitarian situation in Greece, and ultimately, like, then, and you guys both answered that question of the stakeholder thing, which went unanswered until you guys, and you guys gave a very satisfactory answer to. Just because they're a stakeholder, why does that mean that they're acting in Greece's interest? So far, they've only acted in German interests, and you see, like, a German economy has just been going gangbusters ever since, the Greek takeover. But like when you see Greece's economy, it's after all this austerity is supposed to be doing good things, but 7 years after the fact, we have no recovery. It's been flat the whole time. It's literally done nothing. And it's made the situation worse. Now, this is the nitpick I have with you. Solar, you just say austerity makes it worse, austerity makes it worse. She proves the austerity makes it worse to me better than you do. Now, while you say austerity makes it worse, and that assumption goes like unsatisfactorily challenged by the rest of the debaters, that's okay, you get away with it. But in a different round, somebody would have feasted on you by looking at that. He says austerity's bad because austerity's bad. You know, and then it's just like, you know, you have like some dick just like go and just do that to you. And you don't want that. So, anyway, that's how we ended up seeing it. You guys are all very good at this, I think. But, you know, some people have to win and some people have to lose, even in the Super Bowl. So, anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, please do not hesitate to ask.
Thanks for judging.
Oh,
Yeah, thank
appreciate it.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, because it ended up being that and it didn't affect your position. You know, and then you would have had a lot more ground too. It's like, well, it's like, you know, like, because like you guys were really saying, the whole reason this happened in the first place is because they're crappy social class. You know, and it's like we already have a soft.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it's like for example, it's like one of these
Used to
things
be
that
like occasionally practice debating here.
He's telling me that like the reason, one of the reasons that the Greek economic system is so
I'm from San
is they just refuse to update systems
He's from
to
San Ramon.
keep jobs. So like they have instead of having
Hey, it was good.
help them thousands of strong,
No, I went to Doherty.
old style giant like and they have to just go through and
That's wow, that's random. I've not met someone in San Ramon.
Yeah, whenever even like people from the Bay, I'm like from San Ramon, they're like,
Yeah, you can just say yes to because no one's
if it's someone from SoCal, say like it's near San Francisco-ish.
They have a technocrats instead of just being like, here's how you spend your money. It's like, no, here's how you spend your money. Like also, Greece was taken over himself by from 1967 and 7. Like, you know, yeah, because they were having horrible economic recovery from World War II. So like, yeah, it's like he's like first president before.
Yeah, like he was
Yeah.
first week, like now it's just like so like oh
Only two favorites.
Yeah, I mean, you
well,
yeah, you want to establish a universal philosophy. It's like you want to. It's like sovereignty is an artifact.
Yeah.
It's like in this day and age, they've already opted out of a lot of sovereignty by joining.
Ours like
Yeah, that would have made your position much stronger. You know, it's impossible to tell.